Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to look back on an iconic franchise and talk about one of its more comedic yet entertaining sequels. So we have the original, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and this one, the gruesome edition. So what's in the gruesome edition? I'm not really sure, but I don't think that there's even a Blu-ray copy of this movie, and I've been collecting more DVD. There's been a lot of movies that are on DVD. They just don't make in Blu-ray or 4K, and it's one of the interesting things. When I start getting into, or when I got into movie collecting, I wanted 4K only, because that's the best. But, you know, if there are good movies that are on a lesser format, I've come to not be so stingy with my selection and just enjoy what's out there. And like I said, there's movies like this and plenty of others that are only on DVD or aren't on 4K yet that are entertaining, funny, compelling, beautiful stories. And so sticking to 4K only was just it was tiring at first, and I'm so glad I made the switch. So that happened so long ago. That was a little bit of a rant or a recap, but anyway, so we have the DVD for this movie. We have the gruesome edition, and I just love the cover. I just want to start with the cover. I think the bloody chainsaw with just that pale white background, I just think this feels nostalgic. A lot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre boxes, the steelbook that I have and the new 4K copy, both have that white background. So I guess since I believe it mimics the original poster for the movie, so the white background has sort of always been a theme for, I'm assuming, most of this franchise. And so it's no different with this. So without further ado, let's dive into it. I didn't know what to expect going into this movie. I was told it's funny, and I was confused because Texas Chainsaw Massacre was not a funny movie. It was very much, you felt the void of any comedy in that one. But unlike so many other Texas Chainsaw movies that I've come to realize, is a lot of them are only loosely based off of the original story, which is what the first and original, was based off of. But I'm still uncertain. I still have to do my research and still catch up with this franchise. But there's not a lot that are a direct sequel with the same characters that takes place after the original one. I could be wrong. I could be shooting myself in the foot with that one, but I know this one was I believe, the first sequel to the original movie, in which it took place within the same universe as the first one. And so I was excited to dive into this one, and I didn't know, like I said, how funny it could be. I thought maybe there's a chance it could be too corny and I wouldn't like it at all, but that just wasn't the case. This just reminds you of the way horror movies used to be, which I know this one came out a while ago, but still, it just sort of plays with the tropes that we consider nostalgic now. Back then, it was still fresh. It was still exactly what we wanted it to be at that time. And so, this movie, I'll explain why the comedy works, but let's start off. The story has this DJ, nicknamed Stretch. She takes callers, and there's these two teenagers. I think I remember it. Now, granted, it has been a couple years I've seen this, but I've watched some recap videos, and I wanted to make a review for this film myself. So I can't say for certain everything will be 100% accurate, but I'm going based on my memory and the reviews I've seen other people's take on this movie. So the teenagers, college-age kids, whatever you want to call it, I know they were sort of pranking this DJ, this talk show, basically, and the sort of the banter between them is, one, it's kind of comedic, but it turns dark pretty quickly because as they continuously prank calling her, it turns out Leatherface actually comes face to face with these guys, and the murder of them is caught on tape, and it's actually recorded because of the call. And so we have three things here. We have suspense because of the killing. We have the comedy, which comes from Leatherface himself, which I found really interesting. And then we have the violence, him killing them. And his thing in the movie, which I don't have a prop chainsaw over a real chainsaw. Not that I would do it with a real one anyway, to mimic what he does in the movie. But whenever he's getting ready to kill or he's getting ready to use his chainsaw, he always held it above his head and he's sort of grunting and he's shaking it back and forth like this. And it's just the funniest thing in the world because you take this gruesome, sort of grungy, gritty icon and turn him into someone that's funny like that. But the character wasn't trying to be funny. It was just part of his quirky personality, I guess. And so, as an audience, we find it amusing, even though the character wasn't trying to be amusing. So, I think that sort of dynamic between what translates from audience to characters, that is sometimes, in my opinion, what works best for comedy is when characters within a project or movie end up being comedic without trying to be, but the audience receives it as comedy. That's sometimes, in my opinion, the best kind. I think some of the best comedies, if you look at some of the best comedies, the funniest parts aren't some written joke meant for the audience to laugh. It's just the natural reaction from the characters or the cast that just the stale move from a serious conversation to some witty comment that came out of nowhere. I think those are things that make it more funny, and that was the case with this one. So that's sort of its opening, even though it's sort of a longer opening with this sort of highway scene with them on in the car and Leatherface catching up with them. This movie has essentially three locations, and it's one of those movies that it's paced in a way where I can see why others might consider this boring. I just don't agree. I just found it entertaining. But this movie didn't stretch the story, but it stretched the story happening in certain locations. So this was a bit of an opening, but I still found it entertaining because the build-up is what they were working toward, and I think it really worked for this scenario. And so, as the call's recorded, we have the sheriff, who's part of the original ones. I believe it says here, Texas Ranger Lefty. It's been a couple years, guys. I'm sorry. Our Texas Ranger Lefty, his kin was killed by Leatherface's family, so he sort of has personal stakes in this. So even though he's not the main character of the movie, as far as his narrative is concerned, it is definitely a revenge story for him. And so he brings about another aspect because we look at the original one, the story was the victims trying to survive. In this one, it's hunting down and trying to catch the family. So it's just a very wild, bold new take on what that story was, even though the original wasn't a story. It was based off true events. I just love and appreciate the fact that something was done differently with this one. It still felt like the same characters. It was comedic enough for the audience to find it funny and entertaining, while keeping the gritty violence aspects of it very much intact. And it was all well constructed to make this a very entertaining film. And so, Texas Ranger Lefty and Stretch, they end up teaming up to try to lure Leatherface out of hiding. And Leatherface ultimately falls for the trap. He goes to this radio station. And as it happens, Stretch, she ends up escaping. Leatherface ends up chasing her, and Texas Ranger, he ends up catching up later. But they all go to this underground butcher shop. And this is the second location for the movie, or I should really say the third. The highway sequence was really what I would consider the first. The radio station's the main second, and now this butcher shop underground, this is the third, and ultimately final location, even though it felt like it was probably about half the movie. And so it's a large space. There's tunnels, caverns, underground, there's just man-made tunnels, natural tunnels. It's just this large property, even though it's one location in the world mapping wouldn't be concerned. It's one place, but it's large enough to feel like multiple spots for as far as this movie is concerned. And so Stretch is trying to survive. The family's trying to kill her. Texas Ranger is trying to hunt the others down. And so this just becomes this is where it all sort of comes to fruition, is the story so far has led to here. And the interesting thing is Leatherface actually is kind of taken a liking to Stretch. So he ends up trying to hide her from the rest of the family. And so it just becomes sort of that comedic aspect of her trying to hide, Leatherface trying to protect her, while the others trying to find and kill her. And all of this is just creating the violence or the violent scenes as Texas Ranger Lefty. He's going after them. He's trying to take them all down, and ultimately, where its closing is concerned is Stretch. She does survive in the end, but you're sort of left with not really knowing what she'll become, because with Leatherface doing the overhead thing with the chainsaw, she does the same thing, and so it's sort of interesting to sort of speculate as to what would be next, where the story continued. And maybe it does. I'm still catching up with this franchise, and I think that's the fun part for me, is going into these movies absolutely blind. I have had certain ones being recommended as to whether or not it's a good movie or not, but as far as what the story is, whether they return to the original's roots, or it's a comedic take, or it's something new and fresh, I'm just going into these blind. And that's the fun part with horror at all, I would say, is not knowing really anything about it. Sometimes you want to know, what you're getting yourself into. If it's something with really hard to watch scenes or really tough subjects, like Blink Twice, as I mentioned in my review earlier, there was a warning before the movie. So those are the things people would want to know before diving into something like that. But with movies like this, where it's just the standard violence and it's just entertaining at its generic but yet genuine form, I think that's what makes it more. It's more surprising going in blind. It makes it more. It comes as a shock for certain scenes, and that's the way I've enjoyed doing this with a lot of horror movies. That's how it happened with this one, and that's how it's happened with, I would say, about 2/3 of the horror movies I've seen. I've seen either part of one trailer or it's been recommended by someone, so I just get it and I see it. So regardless, was this one of the greatest horror movies ever? No, but I found it entertaining. I thought it was fun. There's some interesting concepts in here with how the kills are done, how people are trying to survive. The revenge take was a new twist for this, and so revenge story for one of our main characters. And so overall, I liked what this movie came out to be. Do I like it more than the original? No. The original is better by a long shot. I think the original always will be the best Texas Chainsaw movie. But it doesn't mean that it is the only good one. I think this joins it in the category of being one of the good ones. So I like this movie. I would recommend it. If you've seen the original, I would recommend this one. If you've seen some of the newer ones and you just don't like them at all, I would say give this one a shot. Don't take it entirely seriously, but just go into it with sort of an open mind for the comedic aspects of it. And I think you'll enjoy yourself watching this movie. I did, and it was a fun watch. So thank you guys for sticking with me for another review for spooky season. I'm having fun sort of diving into these movies. I know we're almost a third into the month, but I'm still going to be catching up. I have lots of plans for movies I want to review. I have my horror movie section of my collection that I sort of want to just dive into most of the ones I have, do a review for all of the ones I've seen. And so these aren't really great ambitions here, but it's something to plan, something to do. It's a hobby. It's fun for me to review these movies. I enjoy watching them. So thanks for watching this one, guys. I look forward to reviewing the next movie for you. And just thanks for watching. Until next time, everyone.